Hello and welcome to Laytechs Weekly, episode 28th April 2021. Laytechs Weekly is brought to you by Laytechs, your protection from tech ignorance. My name is Sean. This week's news: Apple rolls out iOS 14.5 ATT update. It's finally happening. Apple is rolling out its infamous app tracking transparency feature that now allows users to turn off app tracking on all their apps. Facebook has been fighting this feature for a while now, clearly to no avail because, it's live. In this update, users can choose to block all apps from tracking their usage, which has already been implemented a couple of months ago. Because now when you go into the App Store, you see the apps, you can actually see a box that transparently tells you what tracking is being implemented. What's new is that users can actually choose to turn off all app tracking, which means that Facebook or other apps that collect ad data and show you advertisements will not be able to collect your data to serve you better ads, which means that you will start seeing crappy, irrelevant ads very soon. There are good and bad news with this feature. The good is that it would be harder for irresponsible parties to sell our private data to others. Yep. The bad is that ads will be more expensive because they are not as effective anymore. The bad is also that if you're not paying with your data for free apps and services, you're paying with your wallet. So which means that you need to pay for a lot more things moving forward. And if you choose to side with ATT, get ready to shell out money. But yeah, Apple users are generally richer, right? So you can afford to pay for everything. In any case, I did a full around 10-minute to 15-minute but my point of view on this one, and a rundown on what the Apple ATT is on Social Media Weekly episode 28th April 2021, which should be released the same day. How businesses should react to it, what preparations need to be made, and its focus across Facebook, Google, and TikTok. Facebook including Instagram as well. So if you're interested to know more about ATT and as a business, how to prepare for it, go watch that episode. Spotify launches podcast subscription. For a long time now, podcasters have always either provided bonus material or ad-free versions of their content for paying customers. And they've usually done it through fundraising platform Patreon. Spotify wants to provide this service to podcasters, which will be rolled out to US users first. It is a retaliation to Apple's recent announcement of their Apple Podcast subscription as well. Podcasters don't have to pay Spotify anything for the first 2 years, as it irons out all the kinks, raise adoption, but podcasters will still have to pay transaction fees through Stripe, which is Spotify's partner. So if you got subscribers paying the money, Stripe will charge transaction fee for all the transaction that happens. Spotify's got to pay that. Your podcasters got to pay that. By 2023, Spotify will begin taking 5% cut of all subscription revenue, which is still a lot less than Apple's 15 to 30% margin, but I expect Apple might reduce it. I don't know. Although the purpose is to make it easier for podcasters and listeners to subscribe to premium content, Spotify isn't making it easier by not allowing subscriptions to be done in-app. I suspect this is a way to skirt Apple's App Store transaction margin. Yes, all podcasters who want to get onto this subscription service will need to host their podcast from Anchor. Anchor FM is actually the hosting platform that was recently acquired by Spotify. I use Anchor FM for all three of to actually upload and manage all three of my podcasts. And they work very well, so you should try it out. All payments will also be managed from there as well. On top of Apple's recent announcement of Apple Podcast subscriptions, an avid and long-time podcaster and listener as myself cannot see the value of subscribing to podcasts. There's always been a free-for-all content. Of course, there is a little bit of stuff, But at the end of the day, it is a platform that is backed by patrons and backed by advertisement. Perhaps this will change, but we will see if this premium version will lead to higher class podcasts or better quality stuff, because now there's more money involved in this industry. Facebook builds own podcast player. Previously, Facebook said that they are collaborating with Spotify to embed a player within the Facebook app. But apparently now, Facebook is not bringing Spotify's podcast into Facebook's app. Instead, they're building their own podcast player. So the companies move into audio social, where podcasters will need to opt in to upload the episodes onto Facebook. Users will be able to easily access the content and listen to them. It seems many companies are actually beginning to see podcasts as a viable alternative social media, not alternative, but one of the new age social media platform on top of Clubhouse, audio social. So there's podcasts as well. Perhaps one of my 3 podcasts can actually start monetizing moving forward. Apple's M2 laptops in production. According to a report by Nikkei, new MacBooks with M2 chips are already in production and will be released by the second half of this year. While many devices are already on M1 chips announced late last year, there are a host of Proer lineups still not refreshed yet, which are still on Intel chips. Rumors circulating include the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pros, which are the Proer models, which will most likely house new chips. There should also be a new design on the new MacBooks. I think people are saying that it will look more like iPad Pros now, but we will see if it pans out. Honda plans for full EV in 2040. Its plans include electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles, which would account for 40% of vehicle sales in major markets by 2030 and 80% by 2035. The company will be building cars on its new EV cars based on the E-architecture. They have a new architecture that all EV cars will be built on. I guess the first line of cars will be rolled out later half of this decade onwards, and that will be the platform Honda will be basing all their EVs on leading up to the 2040 mark. This could mean that the 2022 Honda Civic may spot the last Type R with internal combustion. I guess they have another model left, so this may not be the last one. The 2022 model will probably last 10 years, so that'll be 2032. Then they can have another one, right, that will run until 2040. That will be the last hurrah for the Type R. With internal combustion, they're probably going to come up with a Type R with EV. We will see. I'm excited. Right, that's all for Laytechs Weekly this week. Laytechs Weekly is available on Anchor FM, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and more. Our full videos are available on YouTube, and I post basic clips on Instagram and Facebook. This is Laytechs Weekly, episode 28th April 2021. My name is Sean. See you next week. Stay safe. Bye-bye.